Got some chips there, bud?
No, you know what this is? The Taylor Swift gummy hearts from the concert.
What flavor?
It's all different kinds of flavors. Apparently, they're quite good. They were getting rave reviews in the audience tonight.
You got your hand like wrist deep in there? What's going on?
You would not believe how challenging this is to open.
How are you still going? How big is this bag?
I should send a picture to you. They covered the opening with this giant sticker. Okay, now I got it. Hooray!
Welcome to 32 Thoughts, the podcast presented by the GMC Sierra AT4X. Shramati, Friedman, Bukauskas, all with you. And Fried, you know, when everyone is freaking out about what's head contact and what's not, coaching changes and who's next, but we're just a couple of chill guys who host a podcast.
By the way, I have to say, I am replayed out.
Replayed out?
Yeah, I don't want to see another challenge for a month. I am asking all of these coaches not to challenge anything for a month. I am tired of video review.
By the way, are you having any difficulty hearing me? Is your voice okay, given the night you had Thursday, quickly before we get into the guts of this episode?
No, I'm all good. It was not too loud that I could handle. We went to Taylor Swift on Thursday night at Rogers Centre in Toronto. And let me just say this, Kyle. I have enormous respect for an athlete or an entertainer or anyone who charges people to see them perform, who understands that parents, especially for their kids, because Taylor Swift's crowd is very young. I took my son. There were a lot of young boys and young girls there tonight. You know, these ticket prices are expensive. These parents, I'm sure there's lots of them listening to this pod. They are grinding at work to get their kids into this concert, and she understands that. 3 hours and 20 minutes. Apparently, the average length of her concert during this tour is 3 hours and 19 minutes. So she gave us one more minute above average, and it was an outstanding performance. I think I've told the story on the pod many times about Michael Jordan, one of the games with the Bulls where they were just killing the Raptors, and he had 3 points at the half. It was a game at the old Dome. There were 36,000 people there. The Raptors had just traded half their lineup. They had no shot at beating the Bulls. It was, I think, their 72-win season. 3 points at the half. Phil Jackson tells him, take the rest of the night off. This game's a joke. And he looks around and he goes, I haven't given these people their show yet. He knows that they're there to see him. 19 points in the third quarter, spectacular. Then he walks off the court after the third quarter and says, now you can take me out. I have so much respect for people who know that there are those in the crowd who've paid their hard-earned money to see them, and they say, I'm going to give you your money's worth. And she does. Incredible performer. Incredible.
That's awesome. Awesome to hear. Glad you had a good time. We talked about just the impact of being in the city, Toronto, last weekend, and I'm sure no different this coming weekend. We got a lot to get to on the podcast here. This episode also, a little later on, the Thought Line, of course, is back, and a conversation with Ryan McDonough of the Tampa Bay Lightning to come as well. But Elliot, we may as well start in Boston. The Joe Sacco era has begun with the Bruins after the coaching change on Tuesday. Got their first win, 1-0 over Utah. Jonas Korpisalo's second shutout of the season. What's been your read on all that has gone on in Beantown over the last 3 days?
Well, the first thing I did, and so I'm going to be honest about this, I didn't get a chance to see a lot of hockey on Thursday, so I'm even more clueless about the games than normal. I want everyone to understand that. But when I saw the score, Kyle, my initial reaction was, I wonder if Korpisalo gets a bit of run here. You know, the Bruins are in a place where they have to win games. And long-term, obviously, Swayman's the guy. I think we will eventually look back at this as a speed bump on his career, and he will sort itself out. But the Bruins right now, results matter. They have to win games. So after watching Korpisalo get the win, I'm curious to see who's going to be their starting goaltender on Saturday. Does Korpisalo get a bit of a run? You know, it wouldn't hurt Swayman. They have a great goalie coach in Bob Essenza. Wouldn't hurt Swayman to just practice with him. So that was number one that jumped into my head. You know, the second thing, obviously, they needed the W. They got it. They shut out a team that has some really talented scorers in Utah. You know, the one thing that, and for the Bruins now, they can't look back. They've got to look forward. And Sacco's going to have a chance to win this job. That's some of the initial reaction I seem to get here. But the one thing that I look at just from everything that happened this week is I hope there's a day where we get a chance to hear what kind of happened in those negotiations between the Bruins and Montgomery. Because I don't think it's as simple as they made him an offer and they couldn't come to a deal and it's over and the team's not winning. We're going another different direction. I think it was deeper than that. I think it was more than just they couldn't reach financial terms. I think there was some talk over, direction of the team. I don't know if Sweeney and Montgomery saw the future the same way. They picking assistant coaches, that was a bit of a bone of contention between the two of them too. The more I hear about this, and again, someday I hope we get the opportunity to sit them both down, inject them with true serum, and hear what they have to say, although that will probably never happen. Because I think it's not as simple as the obvious. I think there was just some deeper philosophical disagreements there. And I think at the end, they kind of realized that maybe they just weren't compatible with each other. So, the Bruins have to move on and Montgomery has to move on. And as we've said, I think Montgomery will land on his feet and we'll see where that's going to be.
So between the contract negotiation that dragged much longer than everyone there, I'm sure, would have liked with Jeremy Swayman, it just seemed, we talked about it at length, of course, because of how much the Bruins have been in the news from training camp right on through to this week. There's been a lot for them to deal with, and for a team that in years past has had the mechanisms to be able to handle it all. You wrote about it in your blog this week. Maybe this is a bit of a team coming to the realization that there ain't no Zdeno Chara or Patrice Bergeron walking through that door. And for as long as Brad Marchand's been doing it, as long as David Pastrnak, Charlie McAvoy have been doing it, this is a set of circumstances that this group hasn't had to deal with of this magnitude, where so much has seemed to have crumbled and been on shaky ground. It's been just a really difficult beginning for them, of course, and I wonder if it's just one layer on top of another, that this core, as long as they've had success and as successful as they've been, I should say, they just haven't had to deal with this much all at one time.
Again, though, I really believe very strongly writing them off is stupid. It's still Marchand.
I agree.
It's still McAvoy. It's still Pastrnak. They have a lot of talent there. They have a lot of guys who've done a lot. I do believe, like I said, eventually Swayman will sort himself out, whether it's now or later. But those holes on the roster and in the dressing room, I do think it's a lot. And like even working on Hockey Night in Canada or the NHL on Sportsnet, anytime there's big change, it takes a while to adjust to it. And I think that's the Bruins were such a machine and how they adapted post-Chara and initially post-Bergeron that I think we just thought that it was going to keep going this way forever. This is the point where I think it's kind of caught up to them a little bit, but I don't think they're incapable of righting the ship. Write them off at your own peril.
All right. The Calgary Flames, Elliot, on Thursday beat the Rangers through a ton of shots at Igor Shesterkin as well. It's 3 wins in a row now for Calgary after a stretch where you thought, okay, coming back down to earth after a hot start to the season. They've rebounded here, Elliot. Dustin Wolf's been a big part of it, of course. Matthew Coronado scores again on Thursday. I mean, it's tough to get a read, I think, totally on this team because of where the expectations were and trying to stay realistic about it all. But through all of that, they've been a fun team to watch. And you haven't always been able to say that about that group over the last couple of seasons.
That was the best game I think Calgary's played all year. I have a friend who's a season ticket holder out there, and he said that that's the best game he's seen all season and one of the most fun games he's seen from them in a while. The guy he was happiest for was Zari, because Zari got a big goal when he's been kind of snake bit lately. I saw the shots, like during the concert, I just checked the score and the shots were like 30-9 at one point. I was like, I thought maybe they were playing like the 94 Rangers, but instead of the 94 Rangers in 94, like the 94 Rangers now, like Lowe is 65, Messier is 63, Richter's 58, Graves and Leach are both 56. Like I thought, maybe is it like an old timers game? They're playing that game, but I guess they just dominated them. I think the one thing about it in Calgary is, they're still really early in their stages of what they're trying to do. But, we talk about Sacco taking over Boston. I really think one of the hardest things to do is go from assistant coach to head coach on the same team, because you go from good cop to bad cop. And if you're phony, the players sniff it out. Like they know, they'll say that this is BS. This guy's a phony. All of a sudden he's the head coach and he's a different guy. Like a couple guys have told me that Huska has really walked that line well. At the end of the day, if you want to get fans into the building when you're trying to rebuild, the worst thing you can do is look like you aren't trying at home. It's hard enough when you're rebuilding to get fans into your arena. But if you're not trying, especially at home, you're really doomed, and you cannot accuse this Calgary team of not trying.
All right, well, you mentioned the shot discrepancy. It finished 49-29 in favor of Calgary. What are your thoughts on the Rangers right now?
I have to go back and watch this one, but I've tried to watch them a bit more lately. I don't know. It just looks to me that something's missing. Like it's just, I always thought they played with a lot of passion. Gallant was a guy who demanded passion, and obviously things changed when Laviolette got there and he started to get the best out of Lafreniere. But Laviolette's another guy who demands passion. Like he really challenges people like Gallant does. They have their differences, but in that way, they're very similar. They challenge you. I don't know. Like they just like Kreider's a fiery guy. I think Miller is a fiery guy. Trouba is obviously a fiery guy. Fox in his own way is kind of a fiery guy. Trocheck is that's a great one. Really fiery guy. I have to go back and I watch this one, but like it's been kind of missing a little bit this year, I thought. Like, do you disagree with me? Tell me if you think I'm wrong on this one.
No, they leak chances. They leak
sure
chances. Do. And Shesterkin covers up a lot of that, and you don't have to apologize for that at all if you can get that. But I know, like, certainly Mike Kelly with Sportlogic has been big on that. Yeah, I really liked, like, since Laviolette came in, like at the end of their morning skates on a game day, they're done their drills, and before they all head off the ice, there's like a big team huddle at center ice, and they pick someone to deliver kind of the final words before they go their separate ways and continue to prepare for the game. I really like that they go about doing that. Like it's a really neat visual of team. But you're right. I mean, through all of that, it hasn't looked like totally the same group that was, 2 wins away from the Stanley Cup final a year ago. So I'm with you. I'm with you in a big way. as I say, the defensive shortcomings have been there. We talked not too long ago about Mika Zibanejad trying to find the best version of himself here again. I think there's still too many good players and too much, I guess, recent history of success for this group. I know that doesn't guarantee anything in the here and now, but I believe that they still are very capable of finding, as you say, what seems to maybe missing at this juncture. It's just been a bit of an odd start out of the gate for a team that has looked so dominant in the not too distant past.
You know, the other thing I really think, and you kind of hit on it there, is when you have been like so close, and they've been, you know, they've won rounds, they've gone far in the playoffs, they've lost early before, like a couple years ago to the Devils, but they've won a few rounds as a group. I think one of the things you really have to fight is that in-season malaise, right? Like it doesn't matter now. You've got to, like, you know, you're not going to really be judged until the playoffs start, but it's not like the playoffs start now. You have to go through that 82 game grind, A, to get the best seeding you can, and B, I mean, to play. And before you even drop the puck in the playoffs. And sometimes I see teams go through this. Like, I think Toronto, they're not doing it this year. I think Toronto's a bit different this year, but I've seen them like that before. And I look at the Rangers and I kind of wonder, you know, is that in-season malaise there? Yeah, we're not going to be judged until later. We think we're good enough to get in there. We've got Shesterkin and Quick's playing really well. Again, I have to go back and watch this one, but, you know, I mean, I've kind of wondered about that with this team this year. If there's that kind of, we'll be judged in April and May. It's a tough one to overcome. Once you get that in you, it's even coaches like Laviolette, who can be really hard coaches, it can be tough to get that out of players. We'll see.
All right, a couple of goalie shout-outs. Marc-Andre Fleury, 1,000th career start. The start Thursday in Edmonton wasn't great, but the finish for him in the Wild certainly was, coming back for the victory, and looks like a sigh of relief with Kaprizov leaving for a bit there after the collision. Said post-game that his knee was okay. Anything you want to add on there?
Well, I think the most relieved guy was probably Drake Caggiula. Like, Drake Caggiula wants to play hard hockey, but he doesn't want to injure Kaprizov. It's like Jack McBain, right? Like, he wants to play hard hockey, but he doesn't want to injure Ovechkin. I mean, I heard he was just like mortified and devastated. Like, he's got Tom Wilson chasing him around the ice. I mean, you know, I understand Tom Wilson is standing up for the franchise player, but there's no way that McBain meant to do that. It was just a terrible accident. And I'm sure Caggiula is looking at Kaprizov leaving the ice and saying, "Please come back. Please come back. I don't need this." So I was glad to see Kaprizov came back. Nobody needs that. He's a great player. You want everyone to play. You know, you were mentioning that, you know, Fleury made a play later on a loose puck and he waved to the crowd when they booed him. Like, that's a good comeback.
A fist pump. Yeah.
Like you'll remember when he was in Vegas the year that they lost to Montreal, that was 2021 in the playoffs. He had kind of a weird play. Remember that?
Yes, gave the puck away behind the net.
Yes.
And Josh Anderson scored to tie the game late in the third, and then Montreal won in overtime. Like, it was a critical moment in the series.
So, like, this is not the same as that, but, you know, that game could become a disaster there. Like, Edmonton's smelling blood. They've just scored like that. You're in danger of getting pummeled in Edmonton's building in that moment. And Fleury, who's seen everything, settles down. And what did he get? He got the chain in the post game.
Yes.
He was named the Wild Player of the game. You know, the thing about Edmonton, we're talking all about all of their issues. I wonder how worried they are about what's going on in net. I think Skinner is good enough to right himself, but I haven't liked what I've seen a lot there lately. That's become a bit of a like, again, it's early, and we'll talk about Ottawa, and Travis Green had some interesting things to say about when in Canada, you get really picked apart when you go badly, and you get really boosted up when you go well, and everybody sees your great moments and everybody picks apart your biggest mistakes. But just looking at Edmonton recently, I've wondered about the goaltending a bit. I think we all thought it was going to be the defense that they were going to fix, and I still think they're going to look at it. But I just wonder, in Edmonton, there always seems to be these moments during the season we wonder, okay, is goaltending a bigger problem than we think? And it kind of sorts itself out. We're in that point again right now. There's no question about it.
Yes, and you remember Stuart Skinner, so around this time a year ago, hired Adam Francilia.
Yes.
As a goalie coach on the side. And they went through, mid-season, Elliot, they reworked his foundation, which, for goalies to do, again, during a season where they were at a crisis point and trying to get back into the playoff mix, it's, in a lot of ways, I'm sure a lot of coaches wouldn't even consider introducing that to the equation. That's an off-season thing. But he did it then, and throughout this past summer, it was a lot more work, kind of a first full off season between the two of them, about just having a good base of your game through his core and having the different positions move fluidly from one to the next. I think that was a big part of what he worked on in the summer. And I believe, those like Adam Francilia and close to Skinner think that he is a better goalie now than he was a year ago. Maybe the numbers don't show it yet. But as you say, right around the time we start to wonder, is goaltending a bigger issue than maybe we thought in Edmonton? It seems to sort itself out. That's where I'm at right now with him, because how much he cares as a guy that was born there, that grew up there, and is now playing in the NHL there. That's a lot for a guy who's still in his mid-20s, and it can be a tough market to play, just like Ottawa, where we'll get to in a moment. Skinner, I very much still believe in, even if the numbers haven't shone brightest for him just yet.
So let's talk about Ottawa. You were at the game on Thursday night. Was it as gloomy as it sounded?
It was a way different feel from the Edmonton game Tuesday. Getting down 2-0 wasn't ideal. What was interesting, Travis Green said after the game, when it got to 2-0 Vegas, Elliot, he said you could feel it on the bench with the players of here we go again. Because as you can imagine, there's been a lot of talk in this market of it's the month of November, and here go the Ottawa Senators on a slide, as they did last year.
Well, that's because you're really negative. You lead those negative people because it's kind of your way. Yes.
You know me very well.
Yes.
As they did last year and the year before that and the year before that, just for whatever reason, this time of year has not been kind to this group.
And tell me if I'm wrong, but that could have been a lot worse than 2-0. I know Allmark gave up one that wasn't very good, but I heard he made a bunch of big saves. That could have been a lot worse than 2-0 if it wasn't for him. Correct?
I would say so, yes. And then they got going. Green shortened the bench in the third period, adjusted the forward lines a little bit, score adjusted. Naturally, they're going to push a little bit more than they were, and they made a game of it, but got nothing out of it when the final horn sounded. So now it's 4 losses in a row for Ottawa, and suppose the one positive is that there's a lot of teams in the East still kind of spinning their wheels.
Yes.
And through all of this, they are by no means out of the race by any stretch of the imagination here. I know Sens fans are not going to want to hear this because they have been force-fed this for too long in their minds, and I totally don't fault them at all for thinking this, but process, I know, doesn't guarantee you anything. This is a time that should be about results for the Sens, but I think for this group, that's the only way they are going to get out of this. Travis Green's talked about it, Elliot. one of the issues is this team's still learning how to play when they're down a goal or multiple goals, to play from behind, because those habits that have been part of this group for a number of years, that's where he senses they start to creep in. You're trying to cheat, you're extending shifts to make a play to change the game, and you end up opening things up going the other way. One thing Mike Kelly, bring him up again, mentioned to me today, when they are
going to start
trailing in
charging
games-
you for using his name.
No, I think Sportsnet already does that enough. One thing he said was that when the Sens are trailing in games, they are 31st in the league in rush chances against, which speaks to how they try to open the game up and the mistakes that result of it. So I believe they are playing better defensively, but it's just been tough, I think, for the fan base to have to digest, because they've seen this movie before. I will say it was not a full house at the Canadian Tire Center, but when they made it 2-1 and then 3-2, those that were there really came alive. Like, they could sense, they understood the urgency and to try to get something out of that game. So credit to them for getting behind their team when it's otherwise been another tough stretch in the month of November for Ottawa and their fans.
Were you leading the cheers in the press box?
You were just telling me how negative I am. How could I be leading the cheers?
Well, you go up and down. You go back and forth. You're very moody. That's what I would say. Not only negative, but just a lot of wild mood swings.
Wow.
The thing I thought was tough was when I saw like some of the challenges that Vegas was dealing with, right? Like, it's not a killer back-to-back. It's Toronto, Ottawa. But they just got spanked. Like, Toronto just dominated them. Pietrangelo was hurt. They still got a bunch of guys who are out, and they lost. And you're kind of hoping that you're going to take advantage of an opponent that's battling injuries and playing back to back. I got to give credit to Ilya Samsonov. He was looking for Ullmark. He's considering, like, he was mad about what Ullmark said about him in the summer, and he circled this one on his calendar. And Bruce Cassidy, he had a choice here. He could have given Samsonov his former team in Toronto, or he could have given him Ullmark in Ottawa, and he clearly knew which one meant more to Samsonov because he gave him this one. And if you're going to talk the talk, you got to walk the walk, and he did that. The one thing I thought was interesting, you're talking about Green. Travis Green is a grinder. He can really grind people. When he left Vancouver, after he was let go in Vancouver, that was his reputation there, was that he could really grind, especially the young guys, because he would be on them saying, if you want to be good, if you want to be successful in this league, you're going to have to get used to like just a high standard and being pushed to that standard. And, I think he's kind of been the same way in Ottawa. I just thought it was interesting, as you said, that after this game, he took his foot off the gas. I think that is so important for a coach. There's times you got to bring the hammer, and there's times you got to use the velvet glove. And, I think that Green is a guy who generally prefers the hammer as much as anything else. But there are times you got to know, tonight I'm putting the hammer back in my trunk and I'm slipping on the velvet gloves. And it's not easy. Look, I don't think Twitter is real life by any stretch of the imagination, but I see what's going on out there. And I can definitely see the fan base is sitting there saying, "Oh no, not again." And it's hard to escape that when you're a player.
And now Green's old team, the Canucks, come to town on Saturday night on Hockey Night in Canada.
And they're going through it too. Like one thing I'll say about the Canucks is, you think about it, you walk into the rink on Tuesday against the Rangers and you find out, okay, the guy who's probably our emotional leader, he's not going to be here right now. And he's probably not going to be here for a couple of weeks. And, it's an unusual situation. He's battling a physical injury and he needs a mental break. And, what did the Canucks do? They played hard. They didn't get a point, but they played really hard. And, I think that's the thing you have to do. I think people understand when you're undermanned or you're shorthanded or your roster isn't what it's supposed to be. But what they don't understand is if you don't compete. And, we'll see how the Canucks do on this road trip without Miller there. He's not expected to rejoin them on this trip, and it ends. Their last game on it is December 3rd. But the one thing I'll say about Vancouver is I got a lot of guys who play hard. And they played hard the other night. And I really think that Hughes has set a really good standard there. And I think that he is a captain who guys follow because he's not always grinding them. He just competes, and I think a lot of athletes really like people who lead by what they do. And he's like that. Like, Jack had a great night on Thursday. I saw the highlights of his assists, and Jack had that big smile. You could see the look on Jack Hughes' face. He was having a fun night. Like, that's a big win for the Devils. Carolina's a standard bearer in the Eastern Conference. The Devils beat them, and it wasn't a fluke win. And Jack Hughes, he's at his happiest when he's, one, winning, and two, he's doing something fun and creative, something that makes him think, you know what? Because, he loves to do something that really shines. And so he has those kind of assists, and he's pumped. So he's pumped for two reasons. I think Quinn is a little bit different. I think he's more of just follow what I do and how I prepare. And I thought he dragged them into the fight against the Rangers. And even though they didn't get the point, I thought it was a really good omen. I think it's going to be hard, but I think it's a good omen for how they're going to be prepared to handle Miller's absence. Hughes had them ready to play.
You mentioned Carolina just quickly. So they announced Frederik Andersen's going to be out 8 to 12 weeks, having surgery done today, Friday. So it's Pyotr Kochetkov and Spencer Martin in the meantime. Do you have any sense of how Carolina's going to play this? Do they want to go looking for some help while Andersen is out? Any sense?
As I said last pod, I think as long as they knew that Andersen was coming back, I think they were prepared to see how this went. They like Kochetkov. Martin's a good spot starter for them. They've banked points. You never want to deal when you're in a desperate spot. And I think they are prepared to kind of see, do we need to do anything, or can we wait to see how this plays out? Like, they know now Andersen's coming back. He's not out for the year. So I think they really, unless they feel that they really have to go out and get somebody. The one thing about Gibson, there's a lot of talk about John Gibson there. There was a point a couple years ago where I had heard that there was a Gibson deal being worked on between the Ducks and the Hurricanes. One team said yes, and one team said no. And I was like, I don't know what to do with this. And so, but at the very least, a couple years ago, there was talk about it. And, and I will say this, that was under the two previous general managers. It was Bob Murray and Don Waddell. So, but, some of the people that were there under Waddell are still in Carolina. And actually, some of the people who are under Murray, although Pat Verbeek is new there now, are still there now. So, there is some history there. But the one thing that the Hurricanes had kind of let people know was we don't have to be pushed into anything because Andersen is due to come back. So that's where it kind of sits for me. Some other stuff right now, I mentioned in my notes that I think Morgan Frost is a name that's out there. I think, I mentioned Chicago just because I think it's a good fit. I've heard there's a few teams looking at this. Centers are hard to find. And I still think Frost is trying to find his way in the NHL, but he is a center. And he does have some pedigree. And I do think teams are looking at that there. And I wanted to say, I think even the Ovechkin, they said, 4 to 6 weeks. That's better than what I initially heard. I initially heard it was going to be 6 to 8, which isn't a huge difference, but it's still better. Like that would be interesting because if he gets back around Christmas, he's still going to have about 45 games. So it'll be interesting.
By the way, I want to shout out Dan Chalmers that did up the EA Sports version of Elliot Friedman, the goalie, suiting up for the Carolina Hurricanes, wearing number 32 in a break glass in case of emergency scenario. So they've got that too, if it really came down to it.
Yes, I could be their e-bug for one night. Do you think, we've talked about this, do you think I could make one save?
Yes, you could make one.
Okay.
Two, I'm not going there.
I have so much respect for people who play in the NHL. I'm not even convinced I could make one.
I think
Although
you could make
that's
one
a good defensive team, I think they could force a really low percentage shot that I might be able to stop.
Yes, they do have a history of doing that. Hey, in between Swift songs on Thursday, Elliot, did you happen to see the video that Player Safety put out as an explainer of the recent headshot, not a headshot, or should I say head contact, no head contact moments we've had around the league the last couple of weeks?
I did. I actually watched it when I got home from the concert.
What'd you
First
think?
of all, I like the fact they did that. And
Me too.
I think they should
everyone
do it
does.
more often. Some of the goaltender interference stuff, for example, I think I've really tried this year to really learn a lot about goaltender interference, but still there are things that come up and you're like, well, I didn't see that. Like at the beginning of this pod, when I said I am video reviewed out, like that one in Calgary on Thursday night, the one with the glove, like I was looking at that and I was like, I've never seen that one before. Like I'm just tired of seeing things I've never seen before, and I have to figure out if they make sense or not. But I like the fact that they did that. Like the thing you can do is people will always give you a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt if you try to explain things to them. I really believe that. And so why not do that? Like when that play happened in real time, I thought the exact same thing that Craig Simpson did. And I thought those referees handled that perfectly. Call the major and look at it. That thing in real time was so fast and so violent. I do not blame any official who says I cannot call this in the moment. I thought the same thing Craig Simpson did in real time. I was like, that is a game misconduct. Okay. And then I saw the angle from the Toronto bench, and it's like, you know what? He got him in the shoulders or chest or whatever you want to say. Did he get the head? Yeah, he got some of the head, but first of all, I hope Knies is okay. Secondly, he really got hurt when his head hit the ground. Like that was the scary thing for me. Knies has had concussions before, so I don't want to see that again. But when I saw that second angle, I was like, he's not going to get a penalty here. And, you know, the one thing I really disagreed with, and I want to say this, the only thing I really disagreed with there is that I don't think that Toronto should have been shorthanded when in the moment the officials couldn't tell if it was clean or dirty. Like we all talk about players shouldn't have to fight after clean hits. Well, the call on the ice was a 5-minute major. That's not a clean hit. Okay. And again, the officials were right. They were right to do it that way. They were totally correct to review it because it was so fast. Nobody could make that call. But if you look at it and you say, oh boy, that's a clean hit. When Toronto thinks as you do that that's a major, Toronto shouldn't be shorthanded. Like in that situation, I think somebody has to step up and say, hey, we thought it was dirty. Can't blame them for thinking it's dirty. So that was the one thing in the moment. I wish that someone had said either even it out or give Toronto a power play or even at least even it out. Like Toronto should not have been shorthanded when they thought it was a major.
Because then it helps cool the temperatures a little bit, right? Because it got nasty for a while afterwards. And love a game with an edge to it, don't get me wrong, but then you hope it doesn't spur something that's really serious because of the compounding effect of everything that happened prior to that, right? I see what you mean there.
The Reeves hit is not comparable. I'm sorry, to the Nyes hit. Like
No.
if you
and
look
the explainer they put out did a good job illustrating why it's not.
well, also, I mean, if you look at Nurse's head, like it's twisted sideways. Like it's completely different. And yes, the explainer, but also like there were a couple that night. Theodore got hit into the boards from behind. And even though, again, it was the main point of contact, there were some people who were really angry. I don't know how many people saw it, but San Jose played Dallas. And at the end of that game, Lyubushkin hit Granlund. And I like, it was not a suspension or anything like that, but it was a big physical, forceful hit with some head contact. And the concussion spotter took Granlund out of the game. And San Jose was down a goal, and they took out one of their best players. But again, I didn't think it was a suspension. I thought the way that they call this, it was handled perfectly in the moment. It just when it happens in and involving Toronto, it's always more intense because it's Toronto. And I think the other thing that has to happen here is everybody's entitled to their opinion, but people have to realize principal point of contact is not in the rule book anymore. People have to stop saying that. It was taken out of the rule book a couple years ago. Now it's a combination of, is the head the main point of contact, and is it avoidable? Like Tanner Jeannot, it was the main point of contact and it was avoidable. Besser didn't move his head. In Reeves and Nurse, it was the main point of contact and it was avoidable. Nurse didn't move his head. This one, it was like Nyes doesn't move his head at the last second. So I think it's Whitecloud's responsibility to make sure it's not the main point of contact. And he did that. Like once I saw that other angle, I was like, this is not going to be a penalty. And if there's one other thing I would say about these plays, this is a problem that stretches to minor hockey. You used to see 5 of these a week. Now you might see 5 to 10 of them a regular season. And as a result, people come up through the minors, college hockey, junior hockey, you name it. They're not skating with their heads up. They're not expecting to get hit. And that is the one thing I think that's really important, is that if you're a young coach out there, coaching a young boy or a young girl or whoever, like Ryan Getzlaff was on the ice, I read, at one of the PWHL camps, teaching players about hitting. So if you're a coach or a parent of a young boy or a young girl, teach them to skate with their head up. You know, my son, when he was skating, I was always like, head up, head up, head up. And he was just skating for fun. But I wanted him to get into that habit. So I think that whenever a hit like that happens, I hope there are young coaches out there saying to players of whatever league you're coaching, especially kids, saying, you got to keep your head up, because if you make it to the NHL and you get in the habit of not looking, this can happen to you, because that's the league where you can still be hit big. Oh, and speaking of San Jose, Celebrini made a great play at the end of the St. Louis game to at least get that one to overtime and a shootout. Someone said to me today, who's been scouting San Jose, he just goes and sees them a lot. He said, Celebrini's the best rookie in the league. He says, I don't care if he wins Rookie of the Year, he's the best rookie in the league. I said, you've decided that
Calgary that
after 20 games?
That.
He goes, he's the best rookie in the league. He might not be the Rookie of the Year, but he's the best rookie making his debut now.
All right, and that brings us to the final thought, which is brought to you by GMC. Elliot, Jonathan Toews,
Yes.
last suited up in an NHL game in 2023. As you know, he's been on a healing journey for a number of years now. He's dealt with inflammatory and immune system issues. He had a heck of a post on
Out of
social,
nowhere.
out of nowhere on Thursday with an update of how it's all been going. Shares that he spent 5 weeks in India undergoing what is called an Ayurvedic detox called Panchakarma. So Ayurveda translates to knowledge of life. I'll be honest, Elliot, all of this, I really don't know anything about, but it was incredibly cool that he posted this, that he shared this, because he's got a ton of fans and supporters still out there beyond the city of Chicago. And it's great to see that this has been a positive experience for him, and it's just not something you think of hockey players doing.
So, first of all, I was glad to see him looking so positive. The last couple of years have been really frustrating for him, so I'm glad to see him looking good. Are you as I've gotten older, and I'm a lot older than you, 54 now, what we've learned about taking care of ourselves from when I was young, like your age, like 16 to now, it's incredible, especially for men. I always found, I grew up with 4 sisters. I always found, maybe it was different in my family and other family, my sisters were always very conscious of what can I do that long term will make me feel better mentally and physically. And I was like, whatever. You do that mumbo jumbo or hocus pocus. I'm just going to be 300 pounds overweight. And, eventually as I got into an older phase, I started to get into better shape, but I don't know if you do anything special, but I've started to look at different things. And it really started with me coming out of COVID. Or I started to look at different ways to take care of my body. Some of it was simple, like vitamin D. I take vitamin D a lot more. I take a little bit of vitamin D once a day, and I think it's done very well for me. And some of it is I don't know that I would do that, but I'm a lot more open to those kinds of ideas. I was never a big sauna guy. Now I've become a lot more of a sauna guy. As you heard last year, I've started trying cold tubs a little bit here and there. But
Yeah, how's that going, by the way?
it's cold. Actually, I don't mind it, but it's cold. I'm not a guy who likes cold. It's cold, but I'm
Cold tub's
sticking.
very trendy.
I'm still sticking with it here and there. Not as much as I could, but I'm still doing it here and there. But I'm watching Toews do this thing, and I'm 15, 20 years ago, never would I would have looked at that and been like, whatever. Now I'm looking at it and I'm like, what is this? Should I be learning about this? And the one thing I tell a lot of people out there is that if you're really curious, don't be stupid like I was and wait until you're 52 to start looking into this stuff. If it's like Ronak told me, if you have time, if it's important to you, you will make time. And I try to do that now. But I would say to, especially, I think, Kyle, we're both guys. Guys are stupid. We don't do stuff a lot that can really help take care of ourselves. We're just really dumb and stubborn that way. Don't be like that. If you see that and you're like, or maybe there's something else I've been thinking of doing, maybe not what Toews is doing, but something I've been thinking of doing to make me feel better about myself, or something that someone I know is doing that's making them feel better physically and mentally. do it. Don't try to do 20 things at once. Pick one thing and just say, you know what? I'm going to try that and commit to that and see if it makes me feel better. That's the lesson I would love to see people get from Taves, because I know with myself, like there's some bad habits I'll never break. Like I like sweets. I talked about my love for chocolate. That'll never go away. I like a beer once in a while. That'll never go away. But I really have tried to do some other different and new things to be healthier, especially for my wife and my son. So I would just say to everybody out there, don't look at that post and laugh and dismiss it. Look at that post and say, I've been thinking about trying something, and now I'm going to do it. Do you do anything special? Like, you're in great shape. I know you run. Do you do anything special?
So my wife's done a lot of work the last couple of years learning about diet, how to fuel your body properly, the value and importance of sleep that is often overlooked. And
yes,
the
I have
irony
to be so much better at sleep.
As I look at the clock as we record this. But I've been fortunate that she has shared what she's learned with me, and I've tried to adapt. I'm far from perfect. She is way more disciplined and dialed than I am, but I'm trying on a number of fronts. As you say, we're dumb in a lot of ways, Freege.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Yes.
Yeah. But you do see the benefits. And the great thing is, who am I? I'm not suggesting any specific advice for anybody out there, but there's so much information available, and you just got to be careful of, all right, what's legit and what's a little suspect. But if you want to learn, there are plenty of avenues to do so. It's great to see, as you say, like the smile on his face in the photos that he posted. They look fantastic, by the way. Looks really encouraging. And to echo your sentiment, be curious, not judgmental.
100%. Kyle, I'm with you on this. I hope it convinces somebody out there who's like, you know what, I'd like to try something, but I'm too scared to. I hope that convinces someone to give it a shot, even if nobody else knows. You don't have to post it on Instagram like Jonathan Taves did.
That was the final thought, brought to you by GMC. When we come back, the latest edition of the Thought Line. You're listening to 32 Thoughts, the podcast. All right, welcome back. Time now for the Thought Line, 1-833-311-3232, 32 Thoughts at sportsnet.ca. Elliot, I've got to tell you, I realize I'm still very new to this whole thing, but there is a sense that I have got early that the Thought Line has to be some of the most fertile ground in podcasting when it comes to ideas, trends, jokes. I am floored every week, and you've got some updates from some of the trends that have continued and questions that have come in with add-ons from week to week on this show.
We have great listeners. We are really lucky to have the listeners we do, some of whom are other professionals. Not that we should ever be confused with professionals, Kyle, but some of whom are other professionals in the business, and others are just great fans. So Tom Gulitti, who works for NHL.com, remember we had the one we were talking about players on a team who had more shots in a game than their entire opponent's roster a couple weeks ago.
The Reggie Leach question.
The Reggie Leach question. He had more shots than another team in one game, the Washington Capitals. He pointed out, and I should have remembered this game, he pointed out on the trivia question about whether one player has ever outshot a team in a game, Claude Lemieux once equaled the Maple Leafs with 6 shots on goal in the Devils' 3-0 win in Game 6 of the 2000 Eastern Conference semifinal. Leafs fans will be like, damn you, Tom. Thanks for bringing that one up again. Sergei Berezin 3, the late Sergei Berezin, Igor Korolev, Steve Thomas, Darcy Tucker. Berezin had 3, Korolev, Thomas, and Tucker 1 at the Leafs shots, and Lemieux equaled them with 6. Also, Dan Duva, who is the great radio voice of the Vegas
Yeah.
Golden Knights, he was talking about names that sound the same, like Griffin Porter, who does a great job curating this list. Kyle, you talked about the Junior A team that has all the guys with the similar names, and the former voice of the Plymouth Whalers, the two players with the same names. He brought up the Syracuse Crunch. That's where he was before Vegas. Fall of 2013, their power play had Nikita Kucherov, Nikita Nestorov, Vladislav Nemesnikov, Dmitry Korobov, and JT Brown. And JT Brown, you'll remember, he changed his Twitter name to JT Brownov, only to change it back a couple years ago. And one thing about that with JT Brown changing it to Brownov, yes, is that you'll remember when Detroit had all the Russian players, at one time, one of the guys who played with the other four was Doug Brown. And the Red Wings, as a nickname, they called him Brownov. So it just slides from generation to generation. It went from Doug Brown to JT Brown. JT Brown, now, of course, one of the voices of the Kraken. Doug Brown, JT Brown, it's like osmosis. It goes from generation to generation. And the last one I wanted to do, I got a note from Rob Adler. And Rob Adler hosts the I Played 2 podcast. And he said, talking about Austin Matthews going to Germany and how more and more North Americans, from Kobe Bryant to Christian McCaffrey to reportedly LeBron James, go to Germany for medical care. He said that former Georgia Tech baseball player Jason Haniger, whose brother Mitch, of course, is a tremendous player for the Seattle Mariners, he also went to Germany for treatment and went on Rob's podcast to talk a little bit about it. So it's much more common, I think, than we realize. Keep the updates coming. We love them.
It's a great community. Okay, you ready for our first submission of this episode?
The way you're laughing, this one sounds like a good one.
Here we go. This is, I can't even get through without laughing. This is The Puck from Jacob's Fireplace Mantle. Hello, Dom, Kyle, and Elliot. This is the puck that grazed Jacob's father's upper lip during the Devils' 4-3 victory over the Islanders on November 9th. I overheard last week's pod from my perch atop the fireplace mantle at Jacob's family home, and I'm writing in to set the record straight. While what Peter from Illinois shared on the thought line is partially true, he has only scratched the surface. You see, after I was deflected over the glass, my tracking technology was indeed deactivated, only to activate my artificial consciousness. No longer bound by the monotony of tracking the velocity of one-timers and offensive zone time, my true purpose was realized: to serve as an NHL marketing mole and amateur scout. It is from the fireplace mantle that I am listening carefully to the idle chatter in Jacob's home, recording not only their views of the game, but also their consumer behavior. With every casual comment about reverse retros, hot dog prices, or their love of pundits like Kevin Bieksa, I am compiling valuable intel to send back to NHL marketing. For now, I'm a prized souvenir, but just as the scar above Jacob's father's lip will fade, so too will their sentiment for me. There will come a day when Jacob finds himself short on pucks, and I will be cast to the bottom of a hockey bag, bound for a frozen pond or local rink. That is where my final mission begins. It goes on for a bit longer, but I think you get
Wow, that is great work. Whoever did that, you are a genius. Whatever you're doing, whoever you do, you should be a writer. That is fantastic. I would say this also sounds like the plot of Wild Robot, which I took my son to see in theaters this week. But that is fantastic.
I had to kick off the thought line with that. That was outstanding. Okay, the next question comes from actually a former teammate of ours, Frege, on the .ca side, Alex Leopold. Hey, Kyle, Elliot, and Dom. I have a question regarding hockey-related revenue. To my understanding, HRR is split 50-50 between the owners and the players, but how does this work in execution? For example, let's take a player like Sidney Crosby and his $8.7 million salary. Does he make is 8.7 million, and whatever split of HRR trickles down to each individual player? Or is there a scale players get based on how many years they played, etc.? Am I way off? Any insight would be appreciated. Love the pod. Never miss an episode.
Okay, so great question. This is the way it works. Every year there's an escrow percentage. And as we talked last pod, that amount is taken out of your salary and held until the end of the season. Okay? So Crosby gets his base, which is 8.7 million. You take off taxes, you take off agent fees. Like, he's just like everybody else out there who collects a paycheck. There are things that come out of your paycheck. But 6% of his salary is taken out of his base and it's put into an escrow account. And this is the same for every player. If you make 1 million, if you make 10 million, 6% of your salary is taken out and put into that escrow account. At the end of every year, and the league fiscal year ends on June 30th, there is an accounting. And to make it simple, when revenues are split 50-50, then that determines how much you get back or don't get back. And so the idea is to balance it at 50% league and 50% players. And depending on how that audit shows up, that determines how much you do or don't get back. Again, I think there have been 2 occasions, but none in the last 15 years, where players ended up making more than 100% of their salary. I don't remember what the number was, if it was 103 or what it was, but other times they've ended up making less than 100% of their salary. And right now, because revenues are really good, the players are coming out whole. So we'll see what happens in the future, but that's the way it works.
All right, another salary cap related question. I'm sure not a surprise given the conversation we had on Monday's pod. Eno from Petawawa, Ontario. Hello, 32 Thoughts crew. First, well done to Dom on planting the Creed reference in the title of the last episode.
Yes, that was good, Dom.
That was good. We come for Kyle's hair and Elliot's hot takes, but we stay for the jokes. Keep it going. My question, with the discussion about percentage of the salary cap impacting player salary expectations and negotiations, do you think the next CBA will have an option for sliding contract values? This would see a player sign for a percentage of the cap rather than a fixed dollar figure year over year. It introduces an element of uncertainty in the team's cap robotics, but could be an intriguing way of dealing with the changing economics in the league. Keep up all the good work, and go Leafs go.
Another great question. I've asked about this in the past. I have. It's a
really okay.
It's a really good question, and periodically I've asked about it, and I don't think so. I didn't get a sense of a lot of likelihood of it. I think the league would be really against it. That's one thing, and secondly, one of the things that a couple agents have told me, like, it's never really happened before aside from COVID where the cap stagnated or it would go down. But I think people would never want to have a deal where you would be in a situation where your salary could drop. One of the things that's actually really interesting right now is the Bitcoin stuff, Kyle. And I know you've got a lot of Dogecoin out there that you really work on that. But
yes. I'm very public about that. Yes.
Yes, I know you really like your Dogecoin. But like, Bitcoin is really high right now, and there's been a couple of situations. Like, there was an NFL player, Russell Okung, and I believe there was an NBA player, Spencer Dinwiddie, who at least tried it. They tried to get paid in Bitcoin, and there were times, like, Okung was. And there were times like it wasn't worth anything. And right now, Bitcoin is really high. And people are like, boy, that was a really smart thing to do. But it's volatile. Like, we still don't know where this is all going to go. So I think some people don't mind a bit of that. But I think there would be a lot of people who would look at it like, I don't want to risk a drop. And so I don't know that something like that will ever get in. Good question, though.
I'm more Doja Cat than Dogecoin, by the
Yeah,
way,
that's a-
for the record.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Andrew. Hello, Elliot, Kyle, and Dom. First, I'd like to say that I'm a police officer that patrols the great Kings County of PEI. And for the record,
Nice.
Elliot, I would never give you a speeding ticket, but I know
Yes.
a few around here that may, so give me a heads up if you're ever around. Second, my motivation to write you guys is because I have a coworker. We'll call him Lucas, and he's been writing you guys forever now and can't seem to find his way into the thought line. Gosh, Lucas, my
Really?
apologies.
Sorry, Lucas. Griffin,
I've
tough
made it.
crowd, Griffin.
I've made it my duty to get on before him, and I really need your help. There may or may not be a coffee on the line, maybe some donuts if I'm lucky, but to my question.
I think I know now which policeman is about to give me a ticket in PEI.
Yes, that's
when,
right.
When I go out to PEI, Lucas, I am not driving out there because I know you're looking for me.
This is all very sus. But to my question, it was mentioned that Connor McDavid had scored over 200 points on Saturday night games, and it made me wonder, is there a player out there, past or present, who has dominated Saturday night hockey, specifically Hockey Night in Canada broadcast games? There's always talk about players getting fired up to play the Saturday night games, and I'm wondering if there is one specific one out there who shines under the Saturday night lights more than the rest. I have to imagine it's a Canadian-born player, but I really have no idea.
Do you know the answer to this?
Well, it's a tough one because, I mean, McDavid, for example, not every game that he plays on Saturday would be a Hockey Night in Canada game, right?
Oh, right,
Sometimes
because
the
they play
Oilers
some
play in
afternoon
the
games,
afternoon
right?
sometimes,
I mean, my
right?
guess would be Gretzky, but do we know the answer to this?
So just to streamline it, I went to the good folks at Sportsnet Stats, and they gave me active players, most points per game on Saturdays. As you would think, Connor McDavid is first at 1.43 points per game. Any guess on who's second? And I'm just looking at players that play for Canadian teams that would regularly appear on Hockey Night in Canada.
I'm going to say Mitch Marner.
Bang! Well done.
Yes!
1.26 points per game. Draisaitl not far behind. 1.2.
Can you hear me patting myself on the back?
Oh, that's what that is?
Yes, yes.
And actually, Elliot, so Jeff Giardat, one of our producers, one of the things that he's wondered about, and it would be really tricky to hammer down, but he's asked the question, who would have the most Hockey Night in Canada towels of all time? Almost impossible to know.
That's got to be a Leaf, though. Like, I got to think,
Sundin?
yeah, he would be, he was one of the guys I thought of, for sure. Sundin. Doug Gilmour, I just don't know if he was in Toronto long enough.
Right. But would have got a few during his years in Calgary, too, I'm sure.
Yes. Yeah. You know what? That's a good point. I think it's gotta be Sundin.
It's not a bad
Or
guess.
you know what? I'll tell you something else too. Like the Canucks, they were on a lot. I would bet that like Bieksa would have a lot, the Sedins would have a lot. Like
Yep.
that Canuck team, though, I bet you a bunch of those guys have a lot of towels.
Great point. Great question, Andrew. Sorry we couldn't give you an official answer. You know who else, too, was brilliant for the longest time? I remember, like, when I was living in Montreal, Carey Price, for a wide stretch
Yes.
of time, he was almost unbeatable on Saturdays. I know the numbers inflated a little bit, kind of the later years of his career there, but it seemed like for a while he was almost automatic when playing under the bright lights of Saturdays.
He great goalie. Like just a great goalie. And you know what? Like he was always very careful with what he said, but when he decided he had a message he wanted to give, you knew
Yes.
what it was with no uncertainty.
Always respected that about him amongst all the other stuff. Okay, so we'll wrap with this, Friedge, from Jeff. Hey, Elliot and Kyle. I just have a question. Well, good. Jonathan Quick.
You've come
has
to the
shut
right
out-
place.
Yes. Jonathan Quick has shut out 25 teams now in his NHL career after the win against Seattle. I'm just wondering what goalie holds the record for shutting out the most teams.
Ooh. Oh, that's a good question.
Yes, it is.
Do you know?
I do. So Jonathan Quick is tied for 8th most,
And how many teams has he shut out?
25.
He shut out 25 teams and he's 8th?
Yes. Now tied for 8th, right? So
Wow. Well, I mean, Brodeur's got to be up there,
he's not the top.
but he's up there. Am I getting closer to the top?
I got the most. I only wanted the guy at the top.
Okay.
But it would make sense that Brodeur is in the mix.
Because, yes, okay, so the most. Okay, let me think. Like, it's got to be a great goalie who played on multiple teams. Like, I'm thinking Ed Belfour. I'm thinking Curtis Joseph. Trying to
Also
think. Yes.
also think about goalies that would have played in eras as teams came and went in the NHL.
Well, so that tells me a bit more. I like because I was thinking about guys like Gump Worsley, right? But Gump Worsley played in a league that had 6 teams and it had 12 teams. So if Quick's at 25, I'm trying to think of who would have played more than 25 teams. That's a good point. Like, so you're telling me we're talking like 60s, 70s, right? Like we're talking like that kind of a player?
Nope. I'm going the other way. In the Jonathan Quick breath.
Oh, so it's in this era. So
Yes.
teams like Atlanta moved, teams like Arizona moved. Ah. So you're saying my logic was faulty. Okay, I'm going to say Sergei Bobrovsky.
No,
Damn it. It's not Price, is it?
it's not Carey Price. Nope,
Because the other names I'm thinking, Vasilevsky,
not him.
Luongo,
Good guess. Not him.
Fleury.
Survey says Fleury.
Nice.
29 different teams he has shut out.
So nobody, because when you said that, I thought we were talking like 30, 31, maybe even 32 with the teams that have gone. So nobody's gotten to 30 teams, eh?
Correct, yeah. I mean, we're
I
talking
bet you-
shutouts here.
Yeah, I bet you people are listening to this and they would have gotten to Fleury faster than I did. I will concede that. I guarantee you there's people listening to this and they're saying Fleury, 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 Fleury. And probably beat me to it.
The one thing I've learned, too, sifting through the Thoughtline submissions every week, is they love Elliot trivia time. So I try to include at least one each time we do this. They love listening to you suffer.
Well, you know,
Though you've had some great polls, though, too.
I got to tell you, like they sound like members of my family.
Yes, that's right. It's all in the family in the thought line, Elliot. 1-833-311-3232 is the phone number to call. The email address, 32thoughts@sportsnet.ca. When we come back, our conversation with Ryan McDonough of the Tampa Bay Lightning. You're listening to 32 Thoughts, the podcast. Okay, welcome back. Before we get to our interview with Ryan McDonough, Elliot, he was part of a wild 7-6 overtime affair on Thursday night against the Blue Jackets. Unfortunately for him and the Lightning, they were on the wrong end of it. Incredible night for Zach Werenski, a franchise record for points in a game by a defenseman with 5. Of course, a career high for him all at once. Give Columbus credit. They did not go away. Down 3-0 early, almost in a very small way. Shades of how that 2019 playoff series started. And I only bring that up because the Columbus admin was ready for the post-game tweet after they pulled off the comeback for good.
Okay, so you sent this to me while I was at the concert. Was that in regards to that lightning letter that they released after Columbus beat them in 2019?
11 billion% it was, to quote you.
God. That's
Wow.
savage.
Right. In the years that followed that one, I would say, favored Tampa with 2 Stanley Cups.
Yes, like they recovered quite nicely.
Yes. But credit to the Jackets being ready for that one after an incredible night.
You know what? You know that the next time Tampa beats Columbus, Julian Brisebois is going to craft the tweet personally.
Oh, yeah, you think?
Some of these social media admins, they're savage in this league now, which is, whether people like it or not, which is what needs to happen, but they are savage. The one thing I'll say about Columbus is they're actually really fun to watch. Like in some of the games they've won, a lot of goals get scored. They've got a real 80s nature to them. Like they are high event games. As you said, Werenski, 5 points. I think Monahan had 3. Obviously Kent Johnson came back and had a good night. Braden Point -3. I mean, I can't remember the last time I saw a game where Braden Point was -3. Like, you just don't expect to ever see that. The one thing is, when I saw the score and I saw Johansson started, I was thinking, if you're Tampa, you've got a big game Saturday against Dallas, but also you really have to commit to resting Vasilevsky. Like, I bet you there's a couple times like Cooper's looking down at the other end of that bench and he's like, I'd like to, but I can't do it. Like, we have to give Vasilevsky his nights off. And, it's a point they lost and a point they'll be mad about losing. And it's a good thing that we interviewed McDonough before that game as opposed to after. But like that's one thing I like about Columbus. They do not play, like, one of the big conversations in Toronto now is Berube doesn't mind them playing low event hockey. Columbus does not play low event hockey.
So Thursday night did not go Tampa or McDonough's way, though they had been going pretty well coming in. Winners of 3 straight prior to that one. McDonough, Elliot, as you know, he's been making a difference on and off the ice by teaming up with AstraZeneca in their Get Body Checked Against Cancer public health campaign. So as you say, before the game on Thursday, he was kind enough to spend some time with us to talk about the campaign, about being back in Tampa for a second go around, and a walk down memory lane from his days playing at Wisconsin. Here now, our conversation with Ryan McDonough of the Lightning. So Ryan, thanks so much for doing this. Why don't we start then? It's Hockey Fights Cancer Month. Your role teaming up with AstraZeneca and the Get Body Checked Against Cancer campaign. Why don't you tell us what it is and what the campaign hopes to accomplish?
Yeah, obviously I'm very proud to have partnered with Lightning's Hockey Fights Cancer Night we have coming up and partner with AstraZeneca in particular. The longer you play in this league, you understand the impact that Hockey Fights Cancer has in the community and so many people that are affected by cancer. For me, it's important to spread the message about getting screened, trying to catch something beforehand. I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned from talking to people that unfortunately have had battles with cancer is, the earlier you catch it, the better chances you have of coming out clean and surviving from it. So they have a website here, getbodycheck.com, where you can learn more about getting screened by your local doctor or doctor near you and take the steps needed from there once you get screened. So shouldn't be afraid to get screened. They do a great job of providing all the right resources and helping you along the way.
I was going to say, you've been involved with fundraising in the fight against cancer, for a number of years over your time in Tampa. After you guys won the cup in the bubble there in 2020, you and Stamkos took the cup to the Children's Cancer Center in Tampa. I'm just curious why you being involved in a really meaningful way in the fight against this disease. Why has that been important to you for long before this campaign?
Well, like you said, I mean, the unfortunate thing is cancer is around us a lot, around your community, around our world a lot, and there's obviously a continuous battle for cures out there, and us as athletes, and especially in Tampa, I think kind of led by our ownership there of making an impact in the community. Everybody down from there, the ownership to the players and everybody in between, does a great job of trying to do their part, and no different for, myself and Stamkos, trying to share that special trophy with people in the community that are going through a tough fight. And I think it hit home. It hits home right away when you get to Tampa, the importance of getting out there in the community and trying to make an impact is something that hits home for you. And was able to partner up with Alex Killorn and do a cancer jam, a can jam tournament for the fight against cancer. Partnered with Moffitt Cancer Centers there and raise some money to help, in particular women that are battling cancer and have fertility issues because of it. So. Just little things like that can go a long ways, and it might not seem like a big thing to you, but just sharing and providing a little bit of income or impact for people can make such a difference for them. So we try to do that.
It's so true. Like, I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to over the years in sports who, when they go on one of these visits, whether it's a Christmas visit or a Stanley Cup visit or an event like the one you and Alex put on, you always meet someone who leaves an impression on you. And I was just wondering if there was anyone in particular, Ryan, that you think of the most and say, this is the person, one of the people, I guess, that I do this for.
Yeah, I have a close relationship with a guy that's a handful of years younger than me, but went to the same high school, Creekendam Hall, as me. Grew up in St. Paul and is a great family friend. His name's Casey O'Brien, and he's actually got a great story out there. If anyone's listening wants to look it up, he played college football for the University of Minnesota, and believe it or not, he's beaten cancer, I believe, 9 times now, and he's still battling it again for a 10th time now, unfortunately. But you want to talk about somebody that's inspiring and a warrior and all the characteristics of a person that is somebody that you can look up to. It's Casey with unbelievable attitude, unbelievable strength. I text him and I ask how he's doing, and it's a quick response, and he's asking me how the season's going and all my family's doing, and it just shows the kind of character that he is. So for anybody listening out there, look up his story. He's an incredible guy, Casey O'Brien. Yeah, no, it's sad, but like I said, very inspiring, and I'm very thankful to have a close relationship with him, and we keep inspiring and supporting one another.
I just looked it up. Wow. Like, what a story. My goodness.
Yeah.
Good on you, Ryan. Really, really good on you. It's always difficult to make the transition from here to there, but as Ryan says, make sure you get checked out. We'll put the name of the website in the show notes so everybody can get it. As someone who's 54 years old myself, I started getting checked more regularly when I was around 40, and it always gives you peace of mind. And, you're on a trip right now with the Lightning, and it's a siblings trip. So tell us about the sibling who is with you and what they're doing while you're doing this interview.
Yeah, no, I'm very fortunate. This is actually my second siblings trip. Got to do one back in the day with the Rangers. We went to Denver on New Year's Eve, actually, and had a pretty fun celebration on New Year's Eve. And now this time around here with the Lightning, back in the day with the Rangers, I brought my older brother, Colin. And now this time my younger brother, Quinn McDonough, gets to come along. So it's been fun for him to kind of see what our daily routine is like. And, even today on a practice day, you're at the rink for a few hours, you got meetings, you got workout and the skate, and then you some recovery and treatment. And before you know it, you've been at the rink for, 4 or 5 hours. So it's a little different than him going to the ice as a squirt or peewee for an hour, 2 hours. So it's good for them to experience it. And obviously he's been so supportive of me over my career. So it's fun for him to, get a taste of our pro hockey life here. We're all going to do some bowling here in a little bit. So after this is done, that's where we're going to head for a couple hours before dinner. So,
how are you as a bowler?
I'm not bad. I actually used the bowl a lot during my years at Wisconsin. You play Friday, Saturday, and Sunday on campus there. There was an all you could bowl for 2.5, 3 hours, for $10. So all of us would go on Sundays, hang out, bowl, watch football games. So got pretty good at it back in the college days, but I probably haven't done it as much since then. But kind of feel like I know what I'm doing out there enough.
So like, are we talking like 200, 250? Like, what are we talking about here?
I know my record, my career best in Wisco is like 255. So I was
Wow.
Yeah, we were good. I know Derek Stepan and Jake Gardner can attest to that. They were always going to bowl in there. We all got pretty good. So I don't know if I could hit the 200s now, but like I said, back in the day, we were we would just we'd start a couple frames, 1 or 2 frames, and if it wasn't going well, we would just restart the game and try to get high scores.
I love that.
And who is the worst road roommate, Colin or Quinn of your brothers?
I don't know. Colin, he's older than me, so he was easy. He was, like the older brother does, kind of lets the little brother do what he needs. And so he's a little bit younger, Gen Z. He's more of a night owl, sitting on his phone late at night here. So tough for him to get to bed when I'm tired after the game last night. I needed to get some sleep. So two different birds, but obviously both love having the chance to get on the road here and experience this together.
So, Ryan, I'm glad you brought up Wisconsin. 3 years you spent there, first stepped on campus in 2007, but this past spring, you got your degree in personal finance. Now, I heard that you and your old roommate, Cody Golubeff, you really attacked this together. You did it virtually, of course, over the last number of years, kind of one class a semester. But even when you were on the road, you guys would FaceTime when you had an hour before dinner or something to go through an assignment. First off, congratulations on that. But what was it like getting that completed?
Yeah, thank you. No, I mean, yeah, I have to give him a lot of credit because I think when COVID was going on there, he had caught wind that all the classes were going online for obvious reasons. And that was never the case beforehand. So we were both similar and probably had about 8 classes left. And, they wanted you to do it in person, which was difficult for us, him being in Toronto and myself playing and being in Minnesota in the summers and stuff. So he caught wind of it and reached out to me right away. He's like, hey, should we try to tackle this thing little by little here? And sure enough, we started taking one class at a time, and like I said, we would just kind of hop on FaceTime at 7:30, 8 o'clock once the kids were all down, and work through some things. So it was, like I said, a great feeling, great accomplishment. Obviously, you go to school, your main objective is your hockey career, but at the same time, school is just as important. And so for us to finish that, and obviously us being dads of young kids, young family, hopefully that inspires them to get a college degree one day themselves.
Now, I have to ask, it's well known, Ryan, that Elliot, my co-host, is just a little bit shy of the credits necessary for graduating from the University of Western Ontario. Do you have any advice for him to finally
thanks, Kyle.
Getting that elusive
I appreciate
degree?
that. Thank you.
I'm just trying to help.
Yeah. So we had some good tutors, that's for sure too. Thankfully, the university had some good help for us tutor wise. So otherwise we would be scrambling along at times too. But no, like I said, slowly but surely, you never know. You can just chip away at it.
I have one question about your playing days there as a Badger, Ryan. So your sophomore season, you're a proud Minnesota guy, but you're playing for Wisconsin. You guys go into Minnesota, the Mariucci, you sweep the Gophers one weekend. And the story I heard was you had a broom out sweeping the roof at a local establishment after the job was done. A, is that true? And B, what do you remember of why that weekend was so meaningful to you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously being a Minnesotan and ended up playing across the border there. They were our biggest rival, and a lot of my closest friends were on that team, Minnesota, there that year. And they're powerhouse programs, back then, still to this day. So to go on the road there and win both games and sweep them, I was pretty excited to say the least. And so, yeah, I think that Sunday we got back, we might have skipped the bowling ritual that day and went to the went to the bar instead, and grabbed the janitor's broom there in the closet and just had a little sweeping, in need of sweeping the room or the roof there. So the guys, we all had a blast, and it was obviously a big weekend for myself and with our whole team. So it was great to see the guys laugh and support me there.
Ryan, back in Tampa this year, and John Cooper is in his 12th full season coaching the Lightning. And I was thinking the day before we record this, Jim Montgomery's fired in Boston with a great record, and I just, in this day and age, I think for someone to coach the same team for 12 full seasons, I think it's unbelievable that everyone doesn't get sick of each other after a few of those. And I'm curious to hear, like, you've come back. Why do you think it still works between Cooper and the Lightning? How has it lasted this long?
Well, no doubt. I mean, you win 2 cups, get to a third, and even before I got here, they were in finals and going on deep runs. I mean, it's hard not to believe in him as a head coach first and foremost, because his messaging and what he preaches and the way he goes about his business, gives you a chance to win each and every night and gives you a great chance to win once you're in the playoffs. I think he's, hands down one of the best as far as dissecting a team when you're going into a series there and finding out, where they're a little weak and where you can exploit them and how you as a team can, give yourself the best chance to win in a series each night. So I'd say the belief that you have in him and his awareness of where the team's always at. I think he's very good about, you're not going to be perfect every night, but you have a standard as far as holding yourself and the team accountable. And he's great about, flirting that line as far as when to be intense and hard on you as an individual or a team, or when to step back and take a breath. And so, like I said, just a great feel of the room at all times. And you have a great belief in him for obvious reasons. His track record speaks for itself. So, the guys, obviously there's turnover each and every year, but the guys that get to be here for a long time, it doesn't seem like a boring old message. So that's the key.
When you came back, Ryan, what was the same about the Lightning and what was different about them?
I mean, I think the same thing was just the competitive spirit as far as, we're here to win each and every night. The expectation is to win. We're not just going through the motions here. We're not just, showing up, collecting a paycheck. It's you're here, you've got to produce, you got to play at a high level. The team's got to play at a high level. And I love that. I think it's great that, everything each and every day is about how can we win the next game, whether it's practice, whether you need a day off. Some guys go on the ice and practice. Some guys might not, that play a little bit more minutes. And that's fine. We all know that, when it's game time at 7:00, the puck drops, our one goal is to win that game. Doesn't have to be perfect, won't be perfect every time, but I just love the fact that, everybody just holds each other accountable, and the main goal is to win each and every night. And that's, something that's hard to find, and they've obviously built to over time. To say, what things might be different. Obviously the personnel is different, but that's an obvious answer. But not too much. Obviously I've had same head coach, same D coach for me, same, medical staff for the most part, trainers. I don't have the same house that I was in before, but I'm living in the same area. My kids are going to the same school they were at. So, it doesn't feel like a move per se when you get traded to a different team. It's easy to be comfortable, and it's easy to just come in and focus on hockey and get going again with the group.
So I was going to ask on that front then. I mean, of course, you would have been present during your 2 seasons in Nashville and giving all you could to the Predators while you were there. But for everything you just mentioned, like, did it feel like you left Tampa really now that you're back there again, Ryan?
And also, Ryan, to that point, like, initially you were disappointed. Like, was it hard? Like, how long did it take you to put that disappointment away and say, okay, I'm happy to come back. I don't worry about that anymore.
Yeah, no, I know it's an interesting question. I mean, no doubt you're hurt. initially you're hurt. We just lost in the finals. You felt like you're a big part. You have, a lot of the same guys of the team, potentially coming back. There's no reason why we couldn't, go on a deep run again and see what happens. And you want to be a part of that. So to get moved, it definitely hurt. And then, over time, you've got to, continue to be a pro and continue to go for that dream of winning again. And for whatever reasons happened, I never thought I would get back to Tampa, at least maybe on this contract that I'm still on. But to have that opportunity come up, some people would have said, how could you go back to a team that traded you or GM that traded you? I'm like, well, that's true at the time. They maybe didn't think of it, but now they want me back and they believe in me again. They think I'm a piece that can help them, like I said, get back to hopefully winning a cup again. So I think that speaks volumes too in itself. And, outside of hockey, this city of Tampa has been special for my family. I have 2 kids born there. Like I said, we know the schools there. We love living there. And so that side of it too had a huge impact as far as where our family's at and where we think our kids can thrive too.
Someone told me, Ryan, who knows you, like as much as you are such a courageous player and how you put your body on the line every night, like he said that you don't get enough credit for your athleticism, like hearkening back to how good of a football player you were, a baseball player growing up. And he thinks for all those reasons, even though you've logged a lot of miles to this point in your hockey playing life, that you could absolutely be a guy that plays into your 40s if you wanted to. Do you think about that? Is that something you would love to have the opportunity to do?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to. I mean, it's every year is a different point of time for me. I mean, I've got 3 kids now. My oldest is 8 years old, second grader. I think she's the smartest person in the world right now. I can't believe how much she learns at school and how she can carry a conversation. So to think down the road in a year or two where she's going to be at and my hockey career is obviously a huge part of our family. Have to balance between being a father and a husband and a hockey player. So it's always, I think if you ask anybody as they get older with a family, it's always something you're constantly balancing and thinking and trying to judge. But, physically, I feel great mentally. I still love coming to the rink and playing each night, competing with the guys. And there's no doubt I feel like I take care of myself and can still play at a high level and be effective and help teams win. And I don't have a set number that I want to get to, but definitely, you want to play this game as long as you can. And I'm in that frame of mind for sure.
So Ryan, I grew up with 4 sisters, and I remember my dad saying to me once when one of my sisters was around that age, 8, he said, "Oh boy, when she's a teenager, I'm going to have trouble with this one." Like, do you have those thoughts and things like that? As you says, he's obviously very confident, and like, do you look at that and say, "Oh boy, is this one going to be a tough one for me to handle"?
No, I think for sure. Like I said, they're so smart and like just so outgoing, and they pick up on everything. When they're 3-4 years old, you can you can say anything kind of around them. But now that they're older, they're staying up later watching your game on TV. She's playing hockey. She's playing soccer. She knows sports now. She knows when dad screws up or gets scored on, and I'm the culprit out there. So then I start to hear about it. So it's like it's crazy how they can just pick up on things and analyze things. But it's obviously so much fun raising kids and being a father and seeing them grow and develop.
What's the harshest criticism she's given you?
She's like I said, she knows when they get scored on. He's like, you got scored on last night, Dad. What the heck? Like, it's funny. She's a good little hockey player, and I think she'll be a forward like her mom. So we'll see.
Last one for me is simply this: Bernie Kosar, Vinny Testaverde, Gino Torretta, Craig Erickson, Jim Kelly, Steve Walsh. Who was the best University of Miami quarterback and why?
Great quarterbacks, all of them, but my answer is going to be Steve Walsh. He's a huge role model for me, and it was funny, actually. I can't remember where I was. Somewhere early on in the season here, one of my first road trips, and was just flipping to. Actually, you know what it was? It was in Carolina when we went up there early because of the hurricane, coincidentally, and 30 for 30 was on, and it was part
The
two.
Miami one?
Yeah, well, it was the Catholics versus Convicts one, and I actually hadn't
yeah.
seen the remake of it, and it happened to be on, and I sat and watched the whole thing, and actually never really watched the highlights of that game against Notre Dame, that as well as it was covered in this documentary, and it was just awesome to see, how that game transpired. Obviously, I was, not even born yet, and I've heard about it, and my parents were at that game and whatnot, so it was fun to watch that game and, see him be a leader and come back, and those are the days they didn't have instant replay, and there was so much controversy on calls and stuff, so it was obviously a heartbreak in the end for him and his team, but like I said, it was fun to see him at that stage, be a leader of his team. And like I said, it's been a huge role model for me, and watching him play pro for as long as he did, lessons that he taught me are definitely with me here today in my career.
Biggest lesson he taught you?
Always respect your opponent. And like you said, he always had a great teams, and there would be, you see it every day in college football, upsets. And he said, you always have to respect your opponent. Doesn't matter how good you think you guys are. And no question, in the NHL, any team can beat anybody on any given night. So you have to be humble and make sure you prepare every day as if it's the biggest game of your career.
And last one from me, Ryan. So, of course, it's well documented your willingness to block shots, amongst other things. I heard a story somewhere along the way in your career in the NHL that a coach came to you and said, look, like, we don't want you blocking shots in the regular season anymore. It's just too tough to watch. And your reaction was basically too freaking bad. Like, I'm not changing how I play. How have you learned to deal, I guess, with fear over the course of your time playing hockey?
And also, which coach was that? I want to know. Who told you to stop blocking shots?
I don't know that one. I'm not too sure on that, to be honest with you. I'd have to think back because, I don't know. Yeah, you got to be, you don't want guys getting hurt. And I think that shot blocking, maybe it's become less and less in the game today, but I still think it's, just as valuable as it was, for however long the game's been around. So I've seen it pay off, and teams that have won, doesn't matter who you are on the team, a block shot can be the difference in a game, and can be inspiring. It can save a goal. It can, lift the team up, change momentum. And so, unfortunately, I've had, I think it started probably when I went to Wisconsin there. Mark Losicki was a big advocate of shot blocking. He used to, teach us technique, shooting tennis balls at us. So obviously it wouldn't hurt in practice, but ever since then, I've just kind of carried that in my game. And like I said, just showing that willingness is the most important thing. It means you care about your teammates. It means you care about winning, and you want to do whatever it takes. And so hopefully it spreads throughout your team, and everybody buys in a little bit more that way.
Awesome. Ryan, this has been great. Really appreciate the time. Thank you for hopping on with us, and best of luck at bowling.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
Okay, thanks once again to Ryan McDonagh and the Tampa Bay Lightning for making that one happen. For your viewing pleasure this weekend, if you've got a hankering for hockey, as we always do come Saturday, kind of an unofficial triple header. The Calgary Flames host the Minnesota Wild. That can be seen nationally on Sportsnet, 4 o'clock Eastern, 2 p.m. Mountain Time. And then the usual Saturday night staple, Hockey Central Saturday, 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. 3 early games this week. As we mentioned, the Vancouver Canucks are in Ottawa, the all-Canadian matchup at the Canadian Tire Center. Vegas is in Montreal, Winnipeg in Nashville, the nightcap, the New York Rangers, and the Edmonton Oilers. We should also mention Hockey Day in Canada, less than 2 months away, January the 18th. Beautiful Canmore, Alberta is the host this year. 2 days prior to that, the 16th of January, we are taking this podcast to Canmore. That's right, we're going on the road. Much more info to come. Stay tuned on that front. There are only so many hours in a day. We appreciate you spending a couple of them with us. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday.